This week I've been reading a fantastic book, The History of the English-Speaking Peoples by Winston Churchill. It's 4 books, but it's a fantastic story. And Churchill talks about Edward III, King of England, 1347, the Black Prince. Edward takes his army to invade France. He takes 12,000 soldiers. And he meets the French army of King Philip of 40,000 knights in armor, with horses, the height of medieval power. These were killing machines, every one of them. Fantastically expensive to field, incredibly powerful and frightening. And July 12th, they meet at the village of Crécy. And the French army, under the rule of King Philip, has lined up. It's an unbelievable assault. 40,000 knights in full armor with their lances and their swords and their banners on their horses, ready to meet the British. Edward has not brought any knights. He has no armor. He has no horses. Instead, he's brought 12,000 bowmen. No one had ever done this before. A bow and arrow. Very lightweight technology. Simple. Inexpensive compared to the cost of fielding a knight and all the backup that went with it. And those guys in their leotards standing there in the field, looking up at these knights, they must have thought, what the fuck have I gotten into? Seriously. And Edward stood there and he said, don't worry, boys, be cool, I got it all worked out. And I'm sure they all went, right. But they stood there with their long bows in their little leotards, and the French armies came up and they looked down, and they looked at the English, and they must have laughed their asses off. And they went, this will be over by lunch. And they took out their swords, and they charged down on them. And the English got their bows ready, and Edward said, hold it, hold it, hold it, now. And in that moment, they unleashed thousands of arrows. They killed the horses. And the knights fell on the ground in their heavy armor and were immobilized in the mud. And then they took out their little swords and they went and they massacred 40,000 French army. The French army was decimated at Crécy. Churchill calls it one of the 4 pivotal battles in history. Not only was the French army decimated, and then Edward went off to free the rest of French-occupied English France. It was a complicated time. But at that moment, medieval history, knights, armor, battles, it comes to an end. In a moment, it comes to an end. Edward not only saw the lightweight technology of the arrows, he had the courage to implement it. He could have said, I'm bringing my knights, but I'm bringing 5 guys with bows just to check it out. Right? Like some of you say, well, we keep making television the same way, but we'll hire a couple of 23-year-olds with laptops and cameras and we'll see what happens. It'll be okay. This doesn't really work. You have to have the courage to embrace the technology.